good sales managers are not good salespeople. So everyone's skill set is really very very different, and if we truly value the diversity of thinking or diversity of skill sets, then we have to be able to recognize this, the problem with the shit sandwich, right, is that people just don't take the good side of it seriously. Hi, I am Timothy Tia, and I'm building better leaders with Kausern Hieu.
Hello. Hi, I'm Kausern Hieu. Welcome to the Building Better Leaders with Kausern Hieu podcast, where I will have a guest companion with me every time, and we'll be tackling letters that you have written in with regards to leadership challenges that you will be or you are currently facing. You're in for a treat today. Today, I'm so excited to have somebody which is very dear to me, Timothy Tia. So he's here today on the show. So before I get Timothy to introduce himself, I would like to actually get to share some stories about Timothy on how he has actually impacted me, right? So the first thing is that I think we knew each other maybe about 20 years ago. This morning I was just counting. I was like, 20 years ago. And I would actually like to thank you for introducing me to join NAFNANG about 10 years ago, right? And I think that made a lot of difference to who I am as a leader today. I can remember at the time, it was 2015, we sat at Starbucks actually, and you were kind of asking me to say, hey, would you want to consider joining as the country manager of NAFNANG Malaysia? So I was thinking about it, and I just spoke to some people in the industry, and they were very encouraging. They were saying, hey, why not? Since you are interested in young people, you're interested to grooming young people and so on, maybe this is a good platform for you, which I did. So I had a good run, about 8 years there before I left to do this thing. So thanks for that. I really appreciate you for introducing me to it. Second thing is also why you're on this podcast is because, knowing you, actually you have a very big heart for developing people. So every time when I meet up with you, you're always talking about how do I, help somebody, how do I get the best from them and so on. So I really appreciate you. For having the kind of heart for people. So and not only that, but you actually have a very good balance of how to foster a relationship, as well as also how to drive results as well. I think a lot of leaders forget about the driving results bit, right? So it's that bit is very important. So you have a very good balance of that. And last thing also, I just want to say that you actually have a very beautiful mind. In this case, you're actually very analytical. Just that the last conversation that we had together quite recently, you're talking about showing me your Instagram feed, what works, what doesn't work. I can remember back then, even then when you were having a blog, you were always sharing like, what keywords you can use, what words you can use can actually get viral and all these things. So I thought that was really, really great. And you apply the same kind of analytical mindset into your business as well, which I really appreciate and which I'm still learning from you. So that's a little bit about Tim, of my relationship with him. So before we begin, for those who doesn't know you, can you please introduce yourself, Tim?
Oh, okay. So I'm Tim. I'm a father of two kids and a famous wife, I think, who's an influencer for Feedline. Um, yeah, I've always been an entrepreneur since I graduated. My first company was NAFNANG, and it did reasonably well, I think, and it went to eventually listed on the Australian Stock Exchange, and then I eventually 2 years later left and sold my shares. And actually, it was just one and a half years later. Um, and then since then, I started Colony,
Mm,
and um, it's like a luxury co-working space and event space in KL. It has it under Colony and a mass market brand called Jerry. We have 16 locations around Klang Valley, um, and yeah, I think my big learning, I think, was um, when I started Colony. I really felt like in my Naflang days, I've always had like a lot of problems, I think, with managing teams, and I've always just accepted it as like, this is normal. Politics in the
mm,
company is normal, or people always complaining and or stuff like that. It's just very normal. And I just accepted it, right? And it was only when I started Colony, then I realized, what heck, even, you know, forget that Navneck had a 200-person team and all that
Yeah.
at point in time, but even with a 7-man team or 8-man team that I was just starting with, we already had all these problems. And I was thinking, oh, okay, maybe this is not normal. Maybe the problem is me.
Mm.
And maybe I was still successful enough now, not because I was a good manager, but in spite of being a bad manager. And sometimes that happens, right? You can be a bad manager and still succeed if other factors are in your favor.
Yeah.
And so so that's when I started like kind of reading a lot of books about how to manage teams. I think that's where I learned that I get my learning from reading books more than I'm not good at attending courses and stuff like that. I can't
Mm-hmm.
I have ADHD, so I can't focus well.
Mm.
Uh, so I learned a number of things and I kind of implemented them, and over a number of years it really has worked. Um, Colony has a team NPS now of like plus 60.
Wow.
We do it every quarter, which is really high, and it shows also in our numbers. We've grown really well, but I'm always been like a paranoid person,
Mm.
so I've always like worried that the next year will be the one that we're gonna start falling, because I know that, like, no trajectory is like constantly on the way up, right? At some point you hit a plateau, and once you hit a plateau, you're just the next step away from going down.
I think the last time we spoke about this as well is because of this so-called using your word paranoid about it that
Mm.
actually helped you to double down on uh, the future as well, right? To double down on kind of like rethink about like how to stay ahead of the curve. So I think with that, let's straight get into the letters that we received from the people. So the first letter, let me just read out very quickly, and we'll try to tackle this together. Dear Building Better Leaders, I've always led with the mindset that you can be kind and still drive performance. And for the most part, I think my team appreciates that. I give praise freely, encourage autonomy, and focus on psychological safety. But when upper management reviews our results, they see areas where we have fallen short, example, missed revenue targets and project delays. I can't help but feel they blame my soft approach. I even overheard someone say maybe they need someone tougher in there. So, what stings is that I know my team is capable. We have done great work before, but now I'm stuck wondering, am I prioritizing culture and connection at the expense of outcomes? Is it possible to lead with heart and deliver hard results? Or does something have to give? So that's the letter that we received from someone who is probably struggling a little bit with getting some results, because probably this letter writer has over-indexed a little bit more on the relationship bit. Any thoughts about how we should advise this letter writer?
It's a well-documented myth, actually, that I can't remember what book is it I read, that the strongman leader is normally the better leader.
Hmm.
And that truly is a myth. Um, because good leaders tend to be very um, compassionate, have a lot of empathy for the team. And that's how they derive loyalty, right? And respect. So,
Yeah.
what do you need? The key ingredient for being a good leader isn't hard, soft, isn't shouting or not shouting, right? But it's actually respect. So, if your team respects you, then you'll be able to lead well. So if you can be shouting, you can be strict, you can be all that, but if your team doesn't respect you, you just never be a good leader.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that misses the mark entirely, lah, right? Um, and so how do you gain respect? You gain respect just like how you gain respect with any other human being. You show that you care for this person, you personally care. You make the move to allow trust, to give your trust to this person, for this person to trust you back eventually, right? And that's how you build a relationship, and that's how you build respect,
Hmm. Hmm.
But and this strongman thing is that we always tend to um, maybe just project what we see. We know, okay, Steve Jobs has been a very tough leader and everything. Or Elon Musk, for example, is known for screwing his team, and all these things. And there is a time and place for these kind of leadership. There's
Mm.
like a wartime CEO and a peacetime CEO, right?
Mm-hmm.
So wartime CEO is one where you need someone to be more decisive, less coaching, less about trying to convince you, but more like, okay, let's just do this shit and let's just do it now
Mm.
because we don't have time, right? But the difficulty about being a wartime CEO is that it's not something that you can have at a very prolonged period of time
Mm.
without team burnout, right? So that wartime is CEO can be very effective, but it has to end sometime. Otherwise, it'll be just like a country at war and a constant war. It's
Mm.
just going to be dilapidated and people will leave and all that. It's exactly the same thing, right? And that's what happens with these kind of leaders. Like Elon Musk is very much a constant wartime CEO. If you notice, if you read his book, his biography, right? He's always engineering a crisis,
Mm.
and that's how he gets everyone motivated to kind of work hard at it. Whether it's like, oh, they're not delivering numbers well enough, or all these kind of things. There's always some crisis to do it, and it governs effectively. But the price he has to deal with is that he has to deal with constant turnover.
Mm.
And you can be a strict, even an asshole boss, right? And that's fine, but that kind of makes it harder for you to find and retain talent over time,
Mm.
unless you're Elon Musk. Unless
Right.
people are drawn because to your brand, because of what you have achieved this far, and because you're Elon Musk. But the problem is that most of us are not Elon Musk, right?
Mm.
So if we're going to be asshole bosses, we would just really repel talent.
Mm.
And if you repel talent, we're just doing very bad jobs as leaders because any leader, any CEO, any entrepreneur is the main goal is to collect the best resources available and deploy them in the most efficient way possible. And if you
Mm.
can't collect the best talent, then that's it.
Mm. Mm.
Cut perform.
Okay. Okay. Um, I'm just rereading again the letter writer, right? I hear you with regards to it is not about there's this myth about the strong man. It's not about hard and soft, but it's really about gaining the respect. I think as I was reading the letter again, I realized there's two parts to the letter, right? So one is that I think this letter writer may not be fully understanding what is the definition of leadership for him, right? Or for her. I'm not too sure the gender. Um, but also, I think there's the other part, which is also managing his or her higher ups. Let's tackle the first one first, with regards to understanding what leadership is all about. So, I think in terms of definition of leadership for this person, how I define leadership is the ability to bring a group of people towards a common goal, but at the same time to also learn how to foster their relationship with them. So it's not either or but and, right? So there's the results bit as well as also the relationship bit as well. Think of it like, for example, like shooting a film or maybe doing a stage play in this case, right? So there is a goal to complete the film, but at the same time you're bringing a group of actors and crew and so on, and you want to be able to provide the platform for them to grow as well when the film is completed. So you get the film as also you get people to grow as well. I think where this letter writer could be over indexing is maybe more on the fostering bit, the relationship bit, from what I am getting from the letter itself, right? And usually, from what I understand, it's like a seesaw, right? So it's always going to be results or relationship, right? And it's not going to be always constant. You cannot balance it this way. It's not going to be fun if it's going to be like a scale. It should always be up and down. So that, like you said about wartime and peacetime, there are times where you need to double down on the relationship bit. There are times where you need to double down on the results bit. Like in this case, I think the management is seeing there's a drop in terms of the revenue missed targets and project delays and so on. So usually for somebody who is a bit more relationship driven, they're more naturally bent for that. The natural thing that they do, I suspect, is that they'll double down on the relationship, the chiri relationship, right? So like for example, they probably do more one-on-ones. They'll probably spend more time, talking to them, understanding them, encouraging them, and so on, right? So I think this is where the mistake is. This letter writer needs to also understand that there's a results bit, and what does the results bit sound like, in terms of the GGRE. it will probably be like this person needs to be more decisive. This person needs to probably at that point in time, like you said, to micromanage a little bit to make sure that this person have more details and so on. So instead of like oh, if the results are bad, so what I do more one-on-ones. I think that's a wrong remedy. That's what I'm thinking, right? So instead they should be dialing up a little bit more on the result side of things, so that the seesaw will tip over more on the result side. I think this is where most leaders will fail a little bit, because they say, oh, it's not me, I'm not naturally bent that way, right? And I realized that for me as well, I'm still not very sure whether I'm a results or relationship, but I suspect I'm more relationship driven. So there was one point in time, I remember quite a while back, the numbers weren't doing that great. And I found it very difficult for me to be able to try to talk to the team to drive numbers in this case, right? But what I did was I actually sat the head of departments down and told them that, hey, for the next couple of months, my leadership style will actually change. From being more empowering, it will sound to you that I'm being more micromanaging, because I need to know what's really going on. I need to know what is the pulse of our clients and so on and so forth, right? I will be more detail oriented. This needs to be outlined, like you said, and I agree with you that it shouldn't be long term, right? If it's going to be forever this way, always war in this case, then people will be repelled, people will leave. So I did tell them about, like, this is going to be a 3 months thing. We need to double down on this. We have to make sure. And my way of leading, you may feel that I'm bringing down your neck. The fact is, it is, right? So I think this is where this person probably need to learn how to push a little bit more on the result side instead of relationship side lah. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Okay, I guess I'll tell you a story lah. And this experience really stuck with me, okay? So last time in my Nafnang days, and this is like 15 years, 20 years ago, and okay, not 20 years ago, but long time ago. And we had this huge network of bloggers, influencers, and we would always work with these movie studios and movie distributors where they'll always give us like free movie screenings, right? And
Yep.
you've been some of them. And and then we have a community team that was meant to build community among the bloggers and influencers where they would have community events. Sometimes just get together, sometimes dinners, sometimes movies and all that. But this part of the the company doesn't really generate any money or revenues or anything like that. So I remember that year we didn't do so well. That one particular year we missed targets, and then we said, okay, so everyone bonuses are going to be less this year than last year, right? And the team, the community team was shocked. They were like, I don't get it. We worked very hard. We did 100 events this year. Our bloggers are all very, very happy, and influencers, they're very happy. So why is it that we're not getting our bonus?
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? The fault of that, right, lay in the leader. And it's not because the leader, the team was happy. He kept all the good people. They executed very well. But where the leader, i.e. me, failed was that I got them working on the wrong thing. They were working on something that really didn't materially make a difference to the bottom line of the company. And the bottom line of the company ultimately is the lifeline, right? Somehow our sales got affected because however strong the community was, it wasn't something that the market appreciated to be able to pay us more for. So when you say you're a leader or a good manager, right, it's not just about keeping a team happy and everything, right? But it's also like problem solving and choosing to work on the right things, you know, and that's why, like, so now in Calling Alert, so we use OKRs where everybody focuses on you know everything, like, what the roles are and how they add up to the end profit target goal. So it's very clear how everyone's role adds up to this thing, you know, and that's what's important. So a leader's job, right, is a very important part of the job is trying to figure out what is it that people should not be working on. not what they should be working on,
Right, right.
because work is plenty, it's unlimited. People can always find things to do, right? Whenever people come and tell me, hey, I'm overworked, I'm overstaffed, I always ask them, what are you working on that you think is not leading to any material change to the company's P&L?
Mm, mm,
You know, and then I'll say stop doing that.
mm, mm.
You
So
know,
in this case, the with regards to this letter, I think that because the management is breathing down this person's neck, right,
mm,
to say that hey, you are not delivering on the numbers, and it seems that your approach is a bit soft and so on. So if you are in the position of the management, and with what you just said just now, to focus on what they shouldn't be working on, how would you advise this letter writer to be able to come across as they are working on the right things to the management?
I will, first of all, I will really investigate and find data to support the fact that I am really working on the right things,
Mm,
right? And saying, okay, I need a certain amount of time for this to show results. You give me the 6 months, after that I cut. If it's not working, I cut. That's it.
mm,
And then I make that call then. So we have to understand this, like leaders don't operate in a vacuum. All leaders report to other leaders. You
yeah,
can be a CEO, you report to directors report to shareholders.
yeah.
Like we don't operate in a vacuum. Our job, right, isn't just to manage downwards, it's to manage upwards as well. And our job is to be very rational and objective about the decisions we're making. That means we cannot be too overcommitted irrationally
Mm,
to an idea. And we
mm,
must be able to have the self-awareness to say, hey, you know what? Shit, this doesn't work. And I give you an example, right? Like I have Colony, that the food part of the business is Colony and it's Jerry. And Jerry in the first 1.5 years was doing poorly, man. And and it was my invention, my idea. I felt an emotional attachment to it. But I told my
mm.
boss, look, if this doesn't turn around, you want me to cut it, just cut it lah. It will give how much more millions in profits back to the company because we're not burning there, right? You just tell me when, and I'll cut.
Mm,
And then they all said, I might give it 6 more months. I said, okay, 6 more months. 6 months later, then the results started to improve. Then, okay,
mm.
so we carry on. But it's just like that, having that open-mindedness, I think,
I
you
agree
know.
with you. I think where this letter writer need to improve on is to be able to, like you say, articulate to, like you say, leadership don't exist in a vacuum, right? Need to be able to manage his or her boss as well, to kind of explain, okay, look, I understand, I hear you, and to kind of like constantly give them an update in terms of what's going on, the milestones and so on. And so there's a timeline, like you say, if by then it doesn't happen, then you take action, right? For example, to cut it off and so on. So I think that is important for them to communicate. I think where some I like what you just said, that some managers or leaders, they are very too attached to a particular idea. So whether or not, for example, oh, I'm here to protect my people, and that kind of ideas in this case, right? I think it's also important to understand that there is, as a business, there is actually a goal that everyone is working towards to, even including the bosses in this case. And the idea is to be able to collaborate with your boss to see how to actually achieve those business goals. And it's not really about, someone once told me before, it's not about managing your boss, but it's about understanding what's the goal and working together and collaborate with your boss towards achieving that goal. So rather than like me versus you, that kind of thing. So I thought that was quite an interesting perspective in this case. So I always say that the bosses are actually on your side, because they do, like you said, they too also have to be accountable to the results to somebody. So it's not really about me versus you. I think some maybe new age some leaders, they actually think that way, that all bosses are bad and so on. So I think they need to understand and be objective and be rational about it lah. So let's wrap up this letter.
Yeah.
So I think let's start off with what the letter writer actually said towards the end. There's something have to give. I think to the letter writer, in summary, there is actually nothing that you have to give away. In fact, you just need to be able to supplement your leadership style a bit more with more results driven. So all in all, I think there is this myth, we talk about this myth about a strong man. It's not about hard and soft, but it's really about learning how to gain the respect And by gaining the respect, how do you do it is to show that not only you care, but also you also challenge them as well. Then we talk about wartime and peacetime CEO. So you need to be able to straddle between that two. But however, in terms of if it's always going to be constantly war, then you've got the Elon Musk punya problem. It will actually cause a lot of turnovers as well. Then then we also talk about, how do we make sure that we are accountable to the bosses as well, is to understand that it's not only about working on the right things because everyone kind of like know what to work on, but it's actually knowing what things that they shouldn't be working on, we should talk about, right? And to be accountable to the bosses and to say that, okay, this is what we are working on and this is the things that we are not working on, because leadership doesn't operate in a vacuum. There needs to be some accountability. So all in all, that is the advice that we probably be giving to this person. Hopefully, this person will get some pointers out of this lah. Okay, so we move on to the next letter. This seems to be like a delegation letter. So it says here, dear Building Better Leaders, here's my challenge. I have a team of capable people, but they don't think the way I do. I'm strategic and fast-paced. I see the big picture quickly, anticipate problems, and plan 5 steps ahead. Some of my team members are more detail-oriented or methodical. Others are more reactive. And while I value diversity of thinking, I find myself getting frustrated when they don't approach problems like I would or just don't move as fast. When I delegate, I either over-explain or under-communicate. Sometimes I jump back in because it's easier if I just do it. And that's not fair to them, but it's also not sustainable for me. How do I let go? How do I delegate effectively and trust people who don't think, plan, or work like I do? Any thoughts on how do we approach this letter writer?
I think it's difficult to expect people to work the way we would work sometimes. In a certain way, and I think that we need to be able to give the bandwidth to people to achieve the same goals but not necessarily using the same way. Because everyone has a different skill set, right? Managers, like good managers are not good sales managers are not good salespeople. So everyone's skill set is really very very different, and if we truly value the diversity of thinking or diversity of skill sets, then we have to be able to recognize this, and letting go is difficult, but it just works like every other thing in life. At first, it's the first few steps of letting go is difficult, but once you see that, okay, it doesn't, nothing really big screws up as bad as you thought it would be, then you slowly let go more and more and more, and before that, you're just comfortable walking without holding onto a railing. And so that most difficult part is that forcing yourself to break through, and you have to do it you have to force yourself to break through, because if you don't, right, then that means you're never giving trust to your team, and if you don't give trust to someone, you cannot ask for trust in return. It just doesn't work that way
I wonder, was there a time in when you were running your businesses before where you have a very clear vision of how things that should be done, but when you delegate it to people that you trust, somehow it didn't turn out to be how it is? And
Yes.
how do you kind of like reconcile those moments?
Yes. But then I keep trying, right? Then I realize, okay, maybe I need to coach this, I need to coach that, and I keep trying. And ultimately, then how I totally let go, I realized that when I truly let go and I get the right people in and they get it right, of course, sometimes they still get it wrong, right? But when they get it right, 7 out of 10 times, they get it done better than I would have done it myself.
Oh, wow.
And that's how then not only do it is then it becomes no longer like force for me to let go, but kind of like, oh shit, actually, I should just let go, because they're just better than I am.
Okay. As I'm reading the letter, I think first thing I would like to thank I would like to probably appreciate the letter writer, the fact that this person has very high self-awareness, that they know that they have to delegate. In fact, it says here that when I delegate, so this person is trying to delegate, right? And is trying to figure out how to delegate. I think the problem is right now it's just that it's not coming out or turning out to be exactly how he or she wants it to be. So, and then this person uses words like, they are very strategic while the rest are not strategic in this case, right? So if I'm going to be coaching this person face to face or so-called one-on-one in this case, I'll probably be asking this person like what the strategic means to you, because they may have a certain idea of what strategic here means to them, and they may be unable to articulate very clearly to their people what is his or her vision about strategy, right? In this case, so I think there's three areas I'm thinking of right now that this person is possibly could be facing. One, what you just said just now, unable to let go, right? And the fact that it's something they had to deal with. So again, if I'm coaching this person, I'll probably be asking this person, where is this coming from, right? There's this need to hold things. So that is one area they need to deal with, and also to be able to help this person to see that there's wisdom in the room, lah, and not to be able to hang on to everything. Like you said, 7 out of 10 times, the team actually does it much better when you learn how to let go. I think that bit this person have to go through. That's one. I think the second thing is also learning what to delegate. Perhaps learning what to delegate. This person, I wonder if this person actually know what to delegate or not, right? Like when they have to hold on to things that need to done, they have to do it themselves, and when to actually delegate certain things. And then the third thing is also how to delegate, which means learning how to set the expectations. I think this letter writer says that they don't move as fast. I think some things are quite tangible, as in you can measure it very quickly. Like for example, moving quick and fast and so on. Those things is easy to measure, easy to explain to the team. To say like for example, all letters, all emails that come in, needs to be replied within 24 hours, right? So those things can be set. I think the non-definitive so-called expectation is the one which is sometimes very tricky. So when, for example, when we tell our team members, oh, you need to be more proactive, right? Or you need to be much more strategic, you need to be much more creative and so on. Actually, what does creative means? What does strategic means, right? So you have a point of view about that, but they may have a different point of view about that. I think that is where, as a manager, need to be able to break down a bit more on exactly what does it mean, for example, to be much more proactive in this case.
Okay, so when someone says like something like that, lah, right? It indicates a little bit of lack of self-awareness. But at the
Oh,
same time, like sometimes, like because like, oh yeah, what? It's almost like okay, it's a bit of a superiority complex, right? Because like I think I'm strategic, but you're not. But what does strategic mean? It's very vague. Like they could think it's strategic. How do you define that? It indicates a lack of self-awareness, but at the same time, how, if I'm trying to convince this person and answer this letter and convince this person, right, calling this out here is just going to like put him in a defensive mode and turn him off, and he's just going to stop listening. So it's also like a difficult thing, like okay, um am I trying to help this person, or am I trying to, and it's impossible for me to help this person in this self-awareness way through like him watching it one directionally like that. It's something I have to be able to coach. So if I coach him, then I'll be like, yeah, why do you say that? Oh, yeah, like you say, what strategic mean to you? How do you know they're not strategic?
yeah.
How do you know you are? And then coach that, I see. But that's just impossible to deliver here.
Okay. I think this is where, if like I said earlier on, I would probably ask, what does being strategic means to you, because they would have a definition of what strategic means to them. This is a true story, right? So this happens a lot of times, especially in those days, advertising agency days, right? The especially the newer team members, when there is no update to update the client, they won't update the client. So that is the problem, right? So we always learn that even though there's no update to the client, you still have to update the client to say that there's no update, and then to give a possible date, right, on when the client should be expecting some kind of updates in this case. But the newer folks usually they say, oh, but I don't need to update that because there's nothing much to update, so no need to update the client in this case, right? So then the conclusion is that the feedback that the manager will give is that, oh, you're not proactive. So I think it also could be a blind spot for newer team members in this case because they do not know that because in their mind it's like if there's no update, why do I need to waste time updating, right? So this is where we need to break down the exact indicators of what it means to be, in this case, let's say proactive. So for example, let's say if I'm the manager, when I say that, hey, you need to be a proactive. Proactive here means this. For example, when there is no update to the client on this particular activity, you should still be updating the client to say, hey, we're waiting for updates. There's none for now, but please expect that progress will come in probably tomorrow in this case, right? Rather than just keeping silent about it. So by doing this, you are demonstrating that you are proactive. So then when the person actually does it, then you kind of like pat the back, pat the shoulder and just say that, great. No, I think this is what I mean by being proactive. So I think these little progress indicators, especially when it comes to behavior, it's very important to be able to help them to define, if not big words like strategic, proactive, creative, those things sometimes they may not they can't figure out like what do you mean by being creative. In fact, sometimes it may even backfire. They may say that what do you mean by not creative? I am creative. I've been doing this, I've been doing that, and so on. But the leader is unable to articulate very clearly what exactly the actions that needs to be done in order for what it means by creative. And that's kind of like one of those things that keeps coming up usually when I do workshops and so on. They kind of say that I don't understand my people. I already told them to be creative, but they're not creative. I told them to speak up, but they don't speak up. I think we have to sometimes help them to be a bit much more granular on exactly what actions that needs to be done. So this is where I was saying about setting the expectation. Any thoughts about this approach?
That would
Or,
be me
or are we
last
being
time.
too micro?
That would be me last time. Oh, you should be more proactive and everything. That I would give feedback like that. But actually, right, that is also not an effective way to manage, right? So why is it not an effective way to manage? Number one, we're assuming that being proactive is this desirable thing that everybody wants to be, where and it's actually being proactive is actually a symptom, not really addressing the core issue. A right way to give feedback for manager, right, is this framework called SPI, situation, behavior, impact. Situation first is you haven't heard back from the vendor, right, for 1 week, and so the client followed up with you. Your behavior is that you didn't follow up with the client before that and tell the client, hey, by the way, I'm still waiting on the vendor. I just followed up on this. The impact of this is that it makes the client feel that you don't have a handle on this thing. It's always important to address what the impact and the consequence are or is, rather than a symptom of it, which is, oh, you're not proactive. But so what does proactive mean to me on a singular human level? So I think that in anything like that, it's important. You're not creative enough, right? You're not creative enough, right? The problem with that, right, is that you can't give feedback, right, that is too vague. What does creative mean? Like creative isn't what one person considers creative is not another person's creative. So imagine giving feedback based on that. It's something that is not actionable. Can somebody just flick a switch now and just say, okay, I'm going to be creative now? You can't, So I wouldn't do that lah. I wouldn't say that you should be more creative or anything like that. Instead, you can say other things. You can say like, yeah, how about an idea that hasn't been proposed before? That's something that is binary. It's an idea has been proposed, has not been proposed. An idea has been done or not done before. Right? How about and don't say like creative, don't say like, oh, out of the box and all that shit. That's all
Yeah,
completely bullshit. Because it's just not actionable. Imagine receiving that feedback, you just don't know what the fuck to say.
Mm, mm,
So remember that one of the most important things as a manager, the most important tools is giving feedback.
yeah.
And and giving feedback isn't just telling, oh, I tell him more creative, tell him more creative. That's just that's not communicating. Telling is not communicating. Communicating is both sides, right? So after I tell, do you understand? And does this person truly understand, or this person just saying they understand?
Mm,
you know. And so it's your job as manager to make sure it's truly understand the consequence of your action. It's truly understood that when you ask them follow-up questions to that to test their understanding of it, they understand it.
mm,
And if they're not doing it, then what's the job of the manager? The job of the manager isn't to tell you again or remind you again. Fuck that. That's not a good manager.
yeah.
A good manager is to assess, is this a will issue or is this a skill issue?
Mm,
Why are you not doing this?
mm.
Right? And then dig down into that and either see whether the issue can be solved or can't be solved. And it can't be solved, then then a greater tool may be needed to address this issue.
Okay, okay. Got it. Okay, let's come to a close for this letter. I think let's do a quick recap of what at least I picked up from the conversation that we're having. Is that I think the first thing is this person probably needs to have a little bit more whether or not this person have self-awareness. We have to ask them, like for example, what this he or she mean by being strategic or not strategic, and from then onwards, I think it's about like so-called equipping this person with tools to be able to communicate his or her expectation to the people. So, like for example, you used the tool SBI, right, which is situation, behavior, and impact. Reason being, I think especially for behaviors which are very vague. For example, we talk about being creative, right? So you're not creative in this case. I think it's very important to be able to be much more binary. So by having the SBI framework, the communication, you say that this is the situation and this is the behavior that you have demonstrated. And I think a lot of times, like what you said, people do not spend a lot of time on the impact bit, right? To kind of say this is the impact if you do this or don't do this. These are the consequences. So based on this, what would you be? How would you actually approach this case? So you kind of open a conversation, like you say, it's just not one-sided, but to have the to and fro conversation. So once the person kind of understand, for example, oh, I need to be creative here means to do these things, then you talk about to then so-called be accountable, right? So to get this person to say, okay, so what do you understand? So based on your understanding, so what are you going to do about it? And then after that, to kind of like check in with them again later on, right? Whether or not they actually carry it out or not. If they carry it out, then great. That's where you kind of like congratulate them and say, hey, this is what we're looking for in terms of when we talk about creative in this case. You've done it exactly. Good job, right? But if they don't carry it out based on what they said they would do, then you talk about evaluating, is it a skill issue or is it a will issue? Then from then onwards, you recoach again. So that's kind of like what I got from the this conversation with regards to this letter. Okay, cool. Uh, we're moving on to the final letter that we have received. Actually, kind of like it looks like we're jumping ahead a little bit because this letter seems to be talking about giving difficult feedback. So we maybe need to double down on the SBI a little bit. Let's see how it goes. So this is the letter from this person here. It reads like this. I'll admit it, I hate confrontation. I'm the kind of leader who always tries to preserve harmony and keep things positive. But lately, I'm starting to see the cost of that. There are a few people on my team who aren't meeting expectations, but instead of addressing it directly, I find myself dropping hints, hoping they'll get the message. But they don't. Then I'll get frustrated, and by the time I do say something, it's more emotional than it should be. I've tried using the feedback sandwich method where I start with something positive, share the criticism, and end on a high note. It feels respectful and kind. But a team member came away thinking everything was fine, even though I tried to raise a serious issue about this, about his attention to detail. Is my feedback too diluted? I know I'm doing them a disservice by not being more direct, but I worry I'll come across as harsh or they'll take it personally. How do I get more comfortable with difficult conversations, especially when I'm wired to keep the peace?
The problem with the shit sandwich, right, is that people just um, don't take the good side of it seriously, and so it comes off sometimes as so it sends wrong messages, or sometimes just comes off insincere. So it's like shit sandwich. What people will say is that I know I I know you work very hard on this, but then the
Hmm.
feedback thing. What does work hard mean? Wow, that's not real feedback, So you kind of like signal to somebody that working hard is good. But again, how do you tell what is working hard and what is not working hard? Right? So that's what we do, because it's not because we're not applying it properly, because we're just applying because we're afraid of confrontation, so we just want to say something nice first. Instead, like, make it a real situation. Like, yeah, say, given the last minuteness of this, I like how you, and that this wasn't planned, and how this crisis was thrown you. I like how you acted on the, and took these following steps to address it, to minimize the damage done. You know, that being said, I think even with these things, I think this is what we could have, we could improve on, or your ability, or the fact that we did this had led to this problem. Like, we have to make sure that it's material, and this is the same even if I do it like kids, raising kids. You know, if you always, like, even when I praise my kids, right, I want to make sure that I praise them for things that are material and real and measurable and binary. Actually, the key is just binary. It happened or it didn't happen. You know, I I don't praise them for I praise because you work hard or you practice so hard for this. No, I never praise them that. But I'll say, like, I like that you didn't give up, even though you joined so many competitions and you lost so many times, but you did not give up. You kept going. You know.
I, I've got a point of view about this, the sandwich method, right? I think a lot of times there's this concept called building the emotional bank of
Mm,
somebody, right? So I think there's this research that's done. I think it's something that they say that in order for you to give effective critical feedback, you need to be able to encourage or praise this person like 6 times, if not mistaken, 6 times before you can give one effective critical feedback in this case. And I don't mean by saying 6 things at the same time, six good things, then you say the one bad thing, right? But I think it's just stretched over time. So it's kind of like catch people doing right. So you build the emotional bank so that when you need to withdraw, in this case, then it doesn't feel that it's always about. I mean, it's much more effective, lah. Let's put it this way. So I think the sandwich method does work, but I don't think it is during that time. But you need to be able to build, like, kind of stretch it over time to build the emotional bank. That means catch them doing right and be very specific, like you said, be very binary about those kind of praises, right? So that the person will feel confident and so on. So when the time comes to give difficult feedback, then the person will also take it much more effectively because you have already have deposited enough praise to that person. I've seen before parents where just by probably raising their finger or just looking at them, immediately the kid will just like, okay, I get it, right? And I think that's quite interesting, because I know of some parents because they when they um, when the kid does something right, they will actually encourage them and be very specific and to praise them very specifically in this case. But when they do something which is not right, in this case, the behavior is wrong. Just by kind of like looking at them and just by raising a finger, they immediately get it. So that you don't have to be like shouting at them and so on. Is that how you approach your kids as well?
Yes, but you know, like it's sometimes it's not that sometimes it's that's the great thing about like managing people, right? There isn't or building relationships or giving feedback. It's never just one thing. You know, if, for example, right, how you would give feedback to a new hire is very different from how you give feedback to somebody you've been working with for 5 years.
Ah, okay.
Right,
Okay.
huh? It's very different, right? Because after a while, right, if you're working with somebody for 5 years, you've already built a certain trust already, one.
Right.
Assuming that you trust well, huh? Don't talk about that, you know, like you assuming that you have in that 5 years built relationship that you have proven not just by words and feedback, but by action that, hey, I personally care for you, I've got you. Then you don't even need a shit sandwich. Then you
Yeah.
just say, can you do this shit? You know what I mean? But if you don't have the trust, then it's different. Lah. It's like if you have a very good marriage, right? And you test it over and over again that this is that I'm there for you, right? Then you can just give the feedback outright. But if you have a relationship after 10 years, 20 years where there's a lot of resentment and everything, you can get the smallest fucking thing with even a shit sandwich and it doesn't fucking matter because they'll just focus on shit rather than the good thing in that shit sandwich. Right, huh? So that's why it's about trust, and trust is built by consistently caring and choosing to trust, choosing to place your trust. You see, you know, and that's why like shit sandwich, SBI. Actually, what SBI and shit sandwich and everything is like a plaster, right, to replace a trust or respect deficit. You know, it's effective for people you don't have trust with, lah, or don't trust you yet, lah, new hires, lah, which you can't help, lah, right? But ultimately, the end goal you got to get to is that trust, lah.
Okay. Okay. So let's say, like in this case, so what I'm learning from this conversation is there is actually a difference between, like you said, someone which has you have emotionally invested in them for maybe a couple of years versus someone who's new. I realized that I think it is when will it be a case? I'm just curious, a case of, let's say, because you have invested such a long time with this person for, let's say, for example, 2, 3 years. Well, one of these managers, for example, one of your senior managers, do you think it's more difficult to sometimes give that feedback to them versus someone who's new, right? Because you do not want to come across as, you know, not being liked, example, right?
It depends, you see. So, okay, so my manager once told me this. He said, yeah, I know I have to choose. Can I actually be a friend or a boss, right? And that's the always on and debate. And I'm like, I don't believe that. Why do you have to choose? Why do you have to bucket your relationships into a specific category when everyone's relationship is unique and different, right? You can say a friend, right? But you have a huge variance of different types of friends and friendships, right? How do you bucket them into things? Who's forcing you to bucket them, right? Why can't you just be this person? Why not? Why is not saying that my relationship with Kausern is as a boss instead of just saying my relationship is with Kausern? You don't have to choose, you know. And the truth is that I you know, like there are friends that you wouldn't work with. What you hang out with every day, you drink anything, but you know you cannot work with them, right? And there are friends and there are colleagues that you just don't hang out with on weekends and everything. Not that you don't enjoy the company, you just don't for whatever reason, right? And but you know that you can count on this person because the difference with your colleagues, right, and your friends is that your relationship with your colleagues is tested every day at work. Some crisis happens, something happens, some opportunity comes for them to push you under the bus, but maybe they don't, right? But your friends' relationships are almost never tested. So is friends a more desirable thing than colleague or boss? I'm not so sure. But do I even need to categorize them? No. Why can't I just be my relationship with this person is like that?
Before we come to a close, I just wonder what was your approach to boss and friend thing? Has it always been this way? Was there a time that it was quite a mesh together, right? It's like, oh, then it's like when it becomes a bit complicated, the boundaries are blurred. Then you don't know how to be a boss in this case. Was there a time that that was like that, and then somehow over time you came to the conclusion that every relationship is unique, like you say.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
it's the recent 7 years. I think since I started calling it 5 years or something like that, I
yeah.
started really looking at it that way. That that look, like we, like I used to in my nothing days, I used to feel like, oh, I need to be friends and everything. And then my colleagues go out and they don't call me, I'm like, hey, why? You know, maybe that's good enough. But now I'm like, oh, if you go out and they don't call me, it's okay, good, have fun. I'm not insecure about our relationship.
Mm, mm.
I know it's unique. I know that what other people may offer you is very different from what I offer you, and I'm not insecure about it lah.
What changed? If I can ask.
I think it's just I think I just started to personally care for the people I work with. And when you personally care about that someone you work with, then you start putting your own thoughts or desires,
Mm.
um, not necessarily secondary to theirs, but in context of theirs. Like yeah, they need this and everything.
I
And
think I can relate to that because I went through that journey as well. Not exactly the same, but more of like my definition of caring for somebody has changed, and that changed the way I approach friendship. In this case, friendship slash workmates. In this case, right? I think previously for me, caring is equitable, or it equates to being nice. That was my issue. That means, oh, I have to be nice. I have to be nice to them, then they can be nice to me, because there's this innate desire to want to be liked in this case, right? So then to me, that is like, oh, that equals to me caring for them because I just want to be nice to them. Um, but over time, I think the definition has changed because caring for somebody can also include having tough love for that person as well, which means that I will do whatever it takes because I care for you, and certain things which I say I will not sugarcoat it because I know it's best for you, right? So that has changed, like what you said, the definition of caring has kind of changed lah for me. So because of that, then now I'm able to be much more direct and open when giving feedback to somebody. Of course, not being rude, but being direct with them because it's actually good for them, I'm not worried about what they think about me because I care enough for them. That's why I want to give that feedback. Because if I don't care about them, I won't even bother to give that feedback at all.
I think it's we I think it's I think it's okay to always be nice. I think that you can give feedback while being nice. Um, but I think more importantly than nice is it's actually not about nice or not nice, but it's always just about being like respectful and having empathy for that
Mm.
person. I mean I have a friend that like recently did something very bad, right? And he's down for it, and I also told him, hey bro, what you did is damn fucking bad, but I'm here for you, I get it. You're caught up in that moment, but okay, let's just I'm here for you anyway, and let's
Mm.
just solve this, But just know that what you did is bad, lah. Do you know what
Mm.
you did is bad?
Mm.
You know?
I think this is where again feedback sometimes come across as a bit too personal, because like what you
Mm,
say, I know that what you did is bad, but
mm,
that does not make you a bad person. I think this is where we sometimes talk to kids as well, right? That behavior that you did is bad, but that does
mm.
not make you a bad person. So
Yeah,
there is a need to be able to differentiate that in this case. So I think this is where if we were to use the right kind of feedback methods in this case, of course taking into account that there's this trust issue which sometimes we forget, right? So we just jump straight into like you said, SBI. These are all just methods. I think what's important to recap is that there needs to be trust which built over time, because the feedback that we give to someone we know for 5 years, versus, someone we just know for 3 months or 5 months in this case is very different in this case. So, and the feedback needs to come across as binary in this case. And because when it's binary, then you are addressing the behavior and not the person, right? So when you like I think back to the earlier question as well, the earlier letter you say that, oh, you're not creative, because the person may feel very personally attacked, because the person's value, for example, personal value could be, I'm a creative person, and then when someone says you're not a creative person, the person will feel very attacked in this case, right? But to be very specific, like you said, to be very binary regards to giving that feedback.
But also, look, one thing to keep in mind is that our thoughts are constantly evolving, and we're also constantly improving, right? So what I think is the right way now may not be what I think may be the right way in a few years' time. And it shouldn't be lah, because we should always be growing lah. We're never at a know-all period, whenever we never hope to reach stagnation lah when it comes to growth, right?
Got you. Anyway, thank you very much for being on today's episode. I think I need to probably rehear some of these things and capture some of these notes again, because I think some things that you said has actually kind of challenged me a little bit about, especially when it comes to the whole area of building trust over time and the kind of feedback that we give for someone who is, that we know for a few years versus someone who we just recently know is going to be very different in this case. I think sometimes I'm too caught up with the techniques of giving the feedback rather than actually spending time on building that relationship.
Yeah.
Building Better Leaders with Kausern Hieu podcast is the advice column for leaders today. Produced and edited by me, Susan Yong. Got a leadership challenge at work? Send us a letter today. More information in the description box.